Hello everyone, this is Josie Pumphrey, and today the species that I chose to discuss with you all is Apis mellifera, and I'm mainly going to be discussing why I believe that this species has the most creative adaptation when it comes to surviving in extreme cold environments. Apis mellifera is what is commonly known as the honeybee. It's a member of phylum Arthropoda and it belongs to class Insecta. Phylum Arthropoda is the largest phylum of the animal kingdom, and it makes up about 80% of all animal species. Some key characteristics as to what makes an organism a member of phylum Arthropoda are having bilateral symmetry. Having this bilateral symmetry helps make movement a lot easier, and it also enhances the ability to see. Another characteristic is having segmented bodies. The bodies of class Insecta, such as the honeybee, have three main body parts, which include the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Jointed appendages is also another key characteristic. Arthropoda literally translates to jointed appendages, arthro meaning joints and poda meaning appendages. You can also see how the honeybee has 3 pairs of segmented legs, giving it a total of 6 legs, where each pair is attached to the 3 main body parts of the honeybee. Another characteristic includes having an exoskeleton made of chitin. This exoskeleton is rigid and covered with layers of wax, but does not include internal bones as a vertebrate would. Open circulatory system is also another characteristic, which means that the insect's blood does not flow in definite blood vessels, rather it bathes the body, tissues, and organs. So members, a part of the species Apis mellifera, have the most creative in adaptation for living in extreme cold environments. And I believe this because they have come up with a way to survive in extreme cold temperatures by keeping the inside temperature of their cluster that they form in their hive up to a scorching 95 degrees Fahrenheit. They do this by shivering and constantly expending their energy. The whole process starts in the summertime, and the bees dwindle down their population by the summer bees dying off and the winter bees surviving. What differs between the two types of bees is the winter bees have enlarged specialized fat bodies so that they are capable of holding on to more nutrients and stay alive a lot longer than the summer bees. So as October and November start to come around and temperatures begin to drop, the winter bees start to form clusters inside their hives to maintain warmth in order for survival. As the temperature is consistently around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the bees are consistently in cluster mode. This works by the outer layer of the cluster bees detaching their wings from the muscles that move them, and they vibrate those muscles, creating friction, which creates heat. During this time, the inside of this cluster is nice and warm, and the bees can continue on by eating honey as their food source. They do this by moving the cluster throughout the hive, accessing all honey that they had set up during the summer. As soon as temperatures outside start to warm up and pollen starts to become more available and the dandelions start to come out making nectar available, this is when the bees know that it's time to go out and start over the whole process. So on this slide, I provided some visuals to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. As you can see, there is a queen bee in the middle of the cluster that is certain to survive. She's always the number one priority into, that's where the middle of the cluster is where it's most warm. They can get it up to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and the bees cluster around the queen and they shiver and they expend their energy and they create friction, which creates heat. And this is kind of a visual of how the whole process is going on. So the honeybees have some unusual forms that have some unusual functions to go along with it. Its unusual forms include its mandible, its stinger, and its compound eyes. The mandible will help the bee fight other bees when necessary. It will help the bee groom and cut and shape wax. Next is the stinger of the bee, which is unusual due to the fact that it's very likely that the bee will die when it stings another organism, and this is because the stinger will get barbed and stuck inside the tissue or whatever it stings. So when the bee tries to fly away, it will literally rip the stinger from the bee's body, which would end up killing it. So you might ask or wonder, so why do bees continue to sting things if they end up dying? Well, for one, bees don't necessarily know things, they just respond. So if they're being attacked, their first response is going to be to use their stinger to defend themselves, whether or not this kills them. Although this isn't always the case, sometimes the bees will successfully sting another insect and live. The only time it could potentially die is if it were to sting a human or any mammals with thick skin, and the stinger would get stuck in that tissue, tearing the bee's body in half. Another form that these bees have are compound eyes, which is made up of two eyes, and they help the bee understand color and light. So how do these form and functions relate? Next. The mandibles of the bee allow it to have very strong jaws. Having these strong jaws allow the bee to eat pollen for food and cut and shape wax, feed the queen and the baby larvae, groom themselves, and even fight other bees. Without the mandible of the bee, it would be extremely difficult to do these things listed, making it harder for the bee to survive. The stinger of the bee is actually made up of strong muscles that are connected to a poison gland surrounding the stinger. Having this stinger allows the bee to defend themselves in order for survival. Lastly, the honeybees have two compound eyes, which are made up of thousands of light-sensitive cells, which help aid in the bee seeing color, light, and directional information from the sun's ultraviolet rays. These compounds allow the bee to move around more successfully, and being able to see color allows the bee to spot which flowers they think are the most beneficial due to the brightness of the flower and knowing if it has lots of pollens and nectar. So here's my reference page. Thank you all for listening to me today, and if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.